I just found these yummy lollipops at a small chai shop when I was a hike, and I picked up these 30 kilos of these candies and set it up in a flea market.
What's been the challenge, in the setting up and the scaling up phase of these manufacturing units?
Most of the times we don't understand the fundamental reasons why a retailer keeps your product. If your product was getting consumed only because the shopkeeper did not have change, then you will have an impact on volume.
Are there traits that you saw in yourself, right, that made you jump into entrepreneurship?
We are essentially giving protein to the population of the country which already can afford it. So what about the rest of the country which cannot afford it? If in any way capitalism can help at least get the opportunity equal at all levels of society, I think that as a just a thought experiment really excites me. I think with GoDesi the biggest vision is
Hello, friends. Welcome to Manufacturing Mindset. Do click on the subscribe button if not done already and like the video. In this episode, I speak with Vinay Kothari of GoDesi, who's building a very unique food brand. And in this video, we'll cover several aspects of his life and business journey, including founder mindset, the journey behind moving from a stable job at ITC to an uncharted territory of building a confectionery brand. We'll cover distribution and how founders should think about expansion across different channels, be it the good old general date format, e-com, or the new disruptor, quick commerce. We'll also talk about branding and what does it take to build a successful brand in the minds of consumer. We'll touch upon manufacturing and the learnings from setting up and scaling a manufacturing setup. And last but not the least is the big vision that keeps a founder going irrespective of the obstacles that come their way. I hope you learn from and enjoy this discussion. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Manufacturing Mindset. I'm glad to introduce you to Vinay Kothari, who's the co-founder and CEO of GoDesi. Vinay, welcome to the show.
thank you Sarvesh, glad to be here.
Big fan of your products, and great to have you here.
Thank you so much. We've been connected for a long time, so you've seen our journey from where we were and what we've got to.
Yes, and it's been a pleasure seeing it. How you've been growing through the years. For our viewers, who, of course, just setting the context for them who don't know about GoDesi, if you can explain to them in your own words.
Sure. So at GoDesi, our mission is to make Desi popular. So what we do is we find our major thesis is that India is going through this entire revolution of unorganized to organized market, and that is happening in the food space as well. So if you see, most of the brands in India were essentially created in the Western formats: chocolates, chewing gums, energy bars, jam, sauces, noodles, bread, biscuits, all Western formats, right? And since most MNCs wanted to change our behavior, they had to create a brand to get us to consume them. But the traditional Indian products, we were always having them, but there was no brand experience that was getting created. So our thesis is how do we create great brand experiences which can stand shoulder to shoulder, or if not surpass Western brands, and at the same time make the more traditional regional Indian products more mainstream. So that's what we do. Our mission at GoDesi is to make Desi popular. So that's what we our largest selling products are some of our erstwhile very regional products like Desi Pops, which is basically a Desi version of a lollipop. It's a tamarind and jaggery kind of a product on a stick. Um, that is what our Parle G is, and on the back of it, we have built a sweets and a treats kind of a brand. So now we currently operate into multiple categories. Again, where every category that we operate in, the thesis is the same: unorganized to organized. For example, we operate in the Indian sweet segment, which is moving from fresh to packaged. We operate in the chicky kind of segments as well. We also operate in bhel puri and Indian snacks segment. So these are the kind of segments that we operate in. We are a truly omni-channel brand. We sell across platforms, offline through GT. We have our own small kiosks as well as we sell through QCom platforms. So that's in brief about what GoDesi does. Uh, yeah.
It's a good overview. You've covered both the channels and the different kind of products that you sell. And we'll talk about the industry and the channels. We'll go deep into that. But before we do that, I wanted to touch upon your own journey.
Sure.
And you've, of course, started your career at ITC.
Yeah.
Tell us what was that like and what made you leave that comfortable job and, getting to build your own brand, which I'm sure would have been a roller coaster journey, if
Yeah.
not anything else.
Absolutely. ITC, I joined straight out of campus. So it was one of those day zero companies which everybody wanted to be a part of, and I was lucky enough to be selected. I got placed at ITC in their agribusiness division, where I was responsible to build the channel to sell ITC's food product into rural India. So I was into mostly rural distribution. I spent a lot of time in multiple locations across the country, from UP, MP, and then eventually Bihar, Jharkhand, and Gujarat. And I was lucky again to be moved between divisions, which rarely happens for a management trainee at ITC. So I was in agribusiness division, then I moved to trade marketing, which is the sales division, and then eventually moved into the foods division as well. So looked at the entire gambit of how an FMCG business works, right from sourcing, procurement, to rural distribution, to sales and distribution, to branding. So I had a very good exposure at ITC. I think whatever I've learned a little bit about business building, economic, unit economics, as well as sales and distribution is from ITC. The ITC prides itself in its process rigor, in its operational rigor. So it's extremely uh, it pays attention to the minutest detail. So that is one of the things that I learned at ITC, and it was a great experience. I worked there for almost 8 years.
And give an example of how that manifests, that minutest detail and that attention to the process that you talk about.
For example, just if you look at the sales and distribution point of view, right now we need to know. So we had an idea about which salesman will go to which route and how many outlets will he do, how many bills is he cutting, how many lines is he cutting per route per outlet, which route has what is the universe of outlets in that particular route, and therefore which are the ones which we are not covering. Are we covering the A, B, C class outlets or D, E class outlets? What are the categories which are getting sold in each outlet? Which is the competitor in each outlet? What is the POSM which is put by competitors? What is the POSM put by us? What is the trade schemes which are running by competitors? What is the trade scheme running by us? So, being almost 100-year-old business, ITC evolved this entire distribution system on the back of cigarettes, right? And cigarettes was extremely operational heavy, where a hawker essentially goes on a daily basis to 50 beats, 50 outlets, and then not only he's selling, he's also collecting cash at the same time, and then he's going back to a distributor. And I, ITC is, I think, maybe the actual reach of products, physical reach of products of HUL might be larger because it goes through the wholesale market, but ITC's direct reach is much larger, I believe. And I think it is the largest in the country. So all of that needed a very large operational rigor. So this is just an example. We also used to have sales and operations meetings, the supply chain meetings, to know that which product, which SKU, how much unit is going to get manufactured, and therefore how much is going, and then mapping that across multiple branches, and then that mapping going to a distribute like to the factory, and making sure that across so many SKUs, um, every supply chain node is fulfilled in total, not only from the point of quantity but also in time. So those were the kind of things that we used to really pride ourselves on. So that's like the operational rigor that we kind of built at ITC.
So you had both the distributor working for you guys as well as the direct sales channel essentially to supplement the distributor.
No, so the direct sales channel worked for the distributor. So we did not have them on our roll. So direct sales channel always worked for the
Okay.
distributor. So it was always a connected thing.
Hmm.
But the management of those direct sales people was done by
Got it.
us.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Yeah. So coming back to the point you were making uh,
Yeah.
on your
So
journey with ITC, yeah.
yeah, so learned quite a bit at ITC across, and also the interesting thing about ITC was that they were building brands. Most of the companies at that point of time were basically getting brands from their global portfolio and copy pasting and improving it and maybe Indianizing it to some extent, and then scaling it up in the Indian market. But we were building them from scratch. So there was some lot of learnings, and at a lot of learnings there was a lot of trial and error, but at the same time there were no playbooks to learn from, right? So that was my entire experience at ITC. Post that, after 8 years I moved out of ITC. I joined a startup. It was called Mad Rat Games. It was a board game startup. My job was to basically build the sales and distribution and marketing for them. Did that for close to almost 9 to 10 months. Um, it, I don't think the role was a great fit for me. And I mean, in terms of culture fit also of the organization, it did not work out. So therefore, I moved out. And then GoDesi happened. GoDesi happened, as I mentioned to you earlier. Also, it was more by chance than design. I just found these yummy lollipops at a flea market when I was on a hike, and at a small chai shop when I was on hike, and I picked up these 30 kilos of these candies and set it up in a flea market, and we were supposed to sell it for 3 days, and we got sold out in first half a day, and that's where the realization happened. And it's essentially connecting dots because my experience was always in consumer brands and consumer goods. So I was like, okay, why are these products not available in urban area? And my strength was distributions and sales. So I picked up these candies and started distributing in India, in Bangalore, in urban markets. And that's how, two and two things got together. We built a thesis and GoDC was born.
So, you touched upon how, for example, you saw that space, there was a gap, and you sort of jumped into it, right? And like you, there are so many of the newer D2C brands that are emerging, which are
Right.
perhaps eating into, market share for incumbents like ITC, Nestle, Britannia,
Yeah,
etc.
absolutely.
As you project 5, 10 years down the line, do you think that some of these older brands will still stay relevant, or the new age nimble brands will start away eating into their share and perhaps cause a major disruption in that market?
I think what I've understood is that unlike maybe some other tech-based startups, consumer is not a zero-sum game. So it's not like somebody has to lose so for somebody to win. The market is so huge. Uh, I think the losers here would primarily, or the market share gain is mostly from the unorganized sector. With now GST rates also getting reduced, a lot of that impact, a lot of lot of uh, the lot of informal economy will come into formal from that point of view, and therefore the differential between somebody who does not pay a GST versus a brand which pays GST becomes much smaller. So therefore, it is much easier to compete. So my at least thesis is that a lot of market share gain will happen from unorganized to organized for the larger brands. For most of the larger brands, a lot of share will happen from unorganized to organized. Whereas the top or the premium tier, or say top 1% of India, which will look for very customized solutions for their needs, will go to D2C brands which cater to them. So it could be a protein brand, it could be a clean label brand, it could be an organic brand, it could be a A2G brand, it could be a premium. So essentially, where there is extremely discerning customer and who have been exposed to global lifestyles, etc., and they want a very specific kind of product, there will be multiple, and since that population is increasing, there'll be multiple brands which will be created for satisfying that need of that population, and those would also be substantially bigger as those could also become substantially bigger as we keep scaling as the income profile of India keeps on improving, right? So that's how I see. So the larger brands might lose their share, or say the top 1% of India to new age brands, but they will also gain a lot of share from unorganized players. So in net, I don't see a drop off in the large brands. And they will
Got it.
also maybe come up with, because I mean, amount the number of resources that they have, and you are seeing that, and I think Tata is doing a great job. Uh, they are into the dry fruits of the world. They are into the cold press oils, the ghee, etc. They've already gone, so they're expanding that category also as we speak. So I don't see them losing out um, large market share.
And of course, they have the power of brand and distribution. So, in
Yeah,
some sense, it's about them also waking up and adding some of these newer product categories, which
yeah,
someone like a Marico also, I think, has
yeah,
been doing a great job,
yeah,
if not the
absolutely.
others at least. You spoke of formalization. One trend, of course, that is driving formalization is GST, right?
Yeah,
And we've all seen the noise around the recent GST cut.
right.
What does that mean for you, your business, and your industry in particular?
I think it is similar for most of the consumption since India is a very consumption-driven economy. I think the consumption will definitely increase. Uh, there will be savings in the essential goods. quite a bit, and it might not again get reflected in the increase in consumption of those essential goods only, but their discretionary income might increase, right? I mean, so discretionary spend might increase. So therefore, spends towards say a better earphone or a better mobile phone or say consumer durables. Like a lot of penetration of consumer durables can also increase, right? Like I think if I'm not wrong, the GST on air conditioners have reduced from 18% to 5%. Or so those could be that could drive a lot of penetration in certain categories. So those are places where I feel that there could be a large increase in consumption. In the long run, I think this consumption increase would be there for like 3, 4 months, but after a point of time, I mean, it becomes table stakes. So that consumption increase will increase, and this might also give impetus. And given the topic of the fact podcast being manufacturing, a lot of consumer brands might start setting up manufacturing units with GST and specifically in categories where GST is reduced to be able to fulfill this demand, right? So I think it can become a virtuous cycle if the consumption increases, and then therefore, if you're able to set up more manufacturing units to be able to support this demand, income will also increase because you will employ more workers, and then I think that virtuous loop can happen, provided that consumption increases in products which we manufacture ourselves, like I mean, India manufactures ourselves, and not that it leads to more imports.
Of course, yes, yes. And what are you hearing from the business community around, there's obviously a lot of hype right now,
Hmm.
but are most folks going to pass on the reduction in the rates? What's going to happen likely here?
I think at least whatever I'm hearing is that a lot of this GST reduction will be get passed on to the consumer in form of either discounts or in form of increased. So in FMCG, I think the volume growth over the next quarter would be much better because in some cases you can't increase the prices or you can't reduce from 5 rupees to 4 rupees 80 paisa, right? Like a product. So you will increase maybe the grammage of that 5 rupee biscuit. So the volume consumption will increase. Similarly, 1 rupee candy, chocolates which are at 10 rupees, maybe dairy milk was at say 8 grams or 6.5 grams. So maybe that moves to a 7 gram or 7.2 grams. So that kind of work might happen. So that's what I see. Volume increase in mass categories. Um, uh, Consumer is going to benefit through that volume increase. And in certain other, which are not say MRP driven categories or price point driven categories, correcting myself, there the price points might reduce also.
Got it. Got it. Interesting. I want to touch base upon, your first product that you introduced, right,
Yeah,
which is more
yeah,
on the confectionery side, right, the Desi Pops. And we've had this discussion in the past as well, where if you recall pre-COVID, and I think there was an article during COVID that came as well, where pre-COVID, because the shopkeepers didn't have change, they would hand out a confectionery item, right? It could be
right,
a
right.
lollipop or it could be a toffee, lozenge, etc., right? How now with UPI, of course, even the small payments, are happening through UPI. How
Hmm.
has that behavior changed, and how's that market shifting on the confectionery side of the business?
So I think I've had this conversation couple of, I think multiple times. Interestingly, if your product was getting consumed only because the shopkeeper did not have change, then you will have an impact on volume. But
Hmm.
that is essentially what we are trying to establish is that people don't have any need for chewing gums or any need for mints or any needs for chocolates or toffee. That is not the only it might have been say maybe 5% of the overall consumption, but people want to eat candies, people want to eat chocolates, people want to eat something sweet or something chatpata or something snacking. So I only the percentage which was post fit, which was say driven by that कि अच्छा छुट्टा नहीं है तो cigarette was priced at 80 rupees, 18 rupees, so therefore 2 rupees ka candy will go through. That might have reduced, but even in that case, right, a smoker who's say smoking and then he wants a mint after that, even if it is UPI, he will pay 21 or 22, but he will want that mint. So I only products which were really forced upon to the consumer is I think where there would have seen a strong drop in overall sales. Our sales has not dropped. We were also not at the 1 rupee, 2 rupee price point, which was essentially still I mean still the bulk of that 80% or 90% of that change wala thing. But I also see that 1 rupee, 2 rupee also not having a very large impact. primarily because this product was consumed because there was a genuine consumer need. This product did not come into existence just because chutta nahi tha.
Yes. And of
So
course, we've spoken about how Pulse has, created a dominance in that category, right? That
yeah,
1 rupee
yeah,
kind of lodgings category. And you've also, built out a strong offline
sure.
network, similar to what Pulse has sort of, been the strategy for them. In general, when you look at the Kirana and the general trade segment as a channel evolving, what's been your big learning in how that's sort of playing out and where that market is going?
I think, given that this vastness of size of Kirana, and I maybe just contextualize, I think, are we also contextualizing the entire Q-commerce growth and therefore where the Kirana is going? Is that something that we want to maybe
Yeah,
touch
we'll
base?
we'll touch upon that, but more specifically, like for you, what's been the big learning around building a strong offline channel brand? And then let's also touch upon how that is now evolving because of the
Okay,
focus that you've had on
right.
that channel.
I think learning, like for any other customer or any other retail partner, I think the largest learning has always been that you need to know what the retailers, what is the win-win or what is in it for the retailer, right? It is always, we as brands typically approach retailers saying that, hey, I have a great product, please keep it, consumer will love it, etc. But most of the times we don't understand the fundamental reasons why a retailer keeps your product, which is essentially the velocity of how fast your product moves cross the cross margin that the consumer that the retailer makes. Now, if you solve for that, either by giving a these very high gross margin and your say, just give as an example, if your speed of your candy is 1/5 of dairy milk, then your margin should be 5x of dairy milk to be able for it to give you the same kind of importance, right? A lot of times you end up going to the retailer and saying that, hey, dairy milk gives you 12%, I'm going to give you 20%, but your product does not move at 5x or 2x the speed or 1 by 2 the speed. Your product moves much slower. So that has been the biggest learning for us that if you are able to figure out as to what is that retailer needs, it could be the margin speed, it could also be attracting a certain set of customers, right? We were in a particular mall where we set up we gave our candies to a particular store, and they wanted our candies because it attracted a particular kind of PG which they were not able to get, say teenagers, etc. So if you are or if you are of it's a category where the fringe SKUs are not getting supplied at the right in the right fill rate by the large brands, then can you be that brand ki acha sweets mein I am getting supplied the Kaju Katli and the Besan Laddu and the Mysore Pak, but nobody's giving me milk peda and Kesar peda and I have latent demand for that. So can you supply and can you fulfill that? So that is what I've learned that if you're able to solve that for any retailer, it doesn't matter only Kirana, but for any retailer, then things work. Even for Kiranas, if a Kirana does not have a shelf space, right, and I give him a box. So we launched with a box, which is a 50-piece box. And the box was toppling every now and then. So the Kirana said, yeah, I don't want your 50-piece box. I anyways make 250 rupees for a month. Either you give me a solution which works for me. So then we gave them a jar and the sales took off. So, and then he could sell the jar later for say 8 rupees, 9 rupees. So his gross margin again increases. So pehle 20% I've already given, plus another 8% I give. 8 rupees is also added. So these are the kind of things that we have learned that if you are able to figure out what is that Kirana needs, um, what is that retailer customer need, and you work your offering accordingly, then a success is pretty much given.
And we've, of course, I think, done quite well in penetrating the offline,
Right.
channel.
Yeah.
Any learnings from Pulse in how, they've managed to build that brand and it continues to stay strong, I would assume, even
Right.
now, right? That is been useful for us also. And if I might ask, is there a way where tomorrow one can see a GoDesi brand even overpowering a Pulse, in the future?
Uh, I think what Pulse did was the product, getting the product right. I think, lots of large orgs which have very deep distributions, including ITC, have tried with confectionery and haven't got to the scale that Pulse was able to get to. And I think my single biggest learning is that the product was so superior to anything which was available in the market that it led to that crazy scale up. So I think the first piece is that product has to be great, good. I mean, great, and something which is substantially different from what is currently existing. Right now, you have a Me Too product, you have 10 Me Too's of Pulse, but still there's no dent in the Pulse overall sales. So I think that is number one. Two, it has to be matched with the distribution strength. You have to have some, you have a great product, but if a consumer is not able to uh, consume it or buy it, then you will always face the scale problem. So I mean, our Desi Pups scale also gets limited to the speed at which we can grow our distribution network. And as you know, distribution takes time to build. You need to add like say 10, 20 outlets on a monthly basis per sales officer multiplied by the number of sales officers. So therefore, it takes a substantial amount of time and substantial amount of investment because the first 20 outlets, the newest outlets don't give you that kind of turnover to be able to absorb the cost of sales. So that has been the learning, that get a really great product out and focus in geographies where you already have strength so that your incremental cost of distribution is not very high. Not open another geography where you have to put a sales officer, ASM, RSM, etc. So if you grow in concentric circles and your increase in distribution, incremental increase in distribution cost is not as high as say opening up a new geography, then it kind of starts making sense. So that is, I think, one of our largest learnings. But yeah, distribution is is one of the largest moats, if not anything, in Indian consumer business even today,
Interesting.
despite all QCOM and despite all e-com, etc.
Yes. And the other layer to that, you mentioned about product, you mentioned about distribution, is the brand part of it as well, right? The
Right.
branding part of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What have we done differently or well over there that's sort of worked out for us?
I think, Sharvesh, I don't think we have done a very good job, to be honest, on the brand part.
Huh.
I think we brand, the only learning that I would be able to maybe put out is A, be very consistent on the brand, and it takes,
Hmm.
you have to be consistently talking about the same thing again, 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 again for it to stick. B, it has to, um, uh, it needs to be, how do I put this? It needs to be consistent for a very long period. So consistent cross the time, and brands do take time, irrespective of the amount of money that you
Yeah.
put in behind it. It will take some time for it to get built. I think we're in the right direction, but nowhere close to the larger brands in the scale that they've got to. One of the other things is that if you have good distribution, just by the fact that you're available in so many outlets, there is familiarity which gets built. So that also doubles up as a way to build this brand strength. So if I am seen at every single time a consumer's need for something chatpata comes across, then I always recollect, yeah, chatpata khana hai to matlab pulse. Now, if
Yes.
even if I create a large TVC campaign and am not available, then that there might be top of mind recall for some time. So there'll be say mental availability, but physical availability will not be there. So that mental availability will also drop off very fast. For say maybe another national brand, mental availability will taper slowly because the physical availability will still be there even if you're not on air. But for a brand like us, if we are not available, then the mental availability will drop very soon as the TVC ends. So, or as soon as the say a mass media or a top of
Yep.
funnel kind of activity ends. So,
But get the basics right, get the product right, get it distributed out there, and then they by itself will do the work for you. And of
and
course,
be
whatever you
consistent.
can, yes.
Yeah, and be consistent about how your brand looks, how your colors look, what are your distinct assets that you're creating, what is the voice that you're creating, what are you trying to communicate to the consumer. Consistent.
Hmm.
Be consistent about it. Not try. Don't spray and pray on that part.
Got it. And tell me, in general trade environment, of course, you have your jar there, you have your box there, you can put standees there. So all of those ways also help you,
Yeah,
bring
yeah,
out your message. Your
absolutely,
own website,
absolutely.
of course, you can do it. And to a certain extent, you would say on e-com, again, you have more visible space if you go on an Amazon website to discover a product and to know about them. When you're
Sure,
buying quick commerce, it's a little bit different, right? One, you're on the mobile phone, so the screen space is
sure.
lower. You're not spending probably as much time on an individual page. What
Hmm.
does that do in terms of the customer discovering, knowing, and exploring the product and then ultimately sort of buying, it?
I think whatever we have learned is that what we have realized is that the key difference between QCOM and ECOM is that ECOM was very browse led, whereas QCOM is more search led. So you are in e-com, sometimes it's like you go to a mall and then you're still trying to figure out, ki, Acha, I will go to the mall and I'll see my 500 different things and something, it's like window shopping and then you like something and then you buy it, right?
Mm.
You're not mostly decided about what you want to buy. It's a lot of browse-led behavior. Big Billion Days here, I will see 1,000 offers and then some offer might connect to, I have a need and I'll buy it. So it's a more
Mm.
browse-led behavior. Whereas QCOM, you open the app, while opening the app, you're very, very sure what you want to buy.
Mm.
Uh,
Mm. Mm.
so you know I want a Kaju Katli or you know I want a candy or you know what a lollipop is. And then there might be some more additions to impulse like, okay, hey, you may also like this. But your reason to go to a particular uh, to the app is very, very clear that okay, I want to buy vegetables today or I want to buy milk and curd, etc. So here the difference in QCOM is essentially since it's a much more bottom of funnel, therefore you need to have be able to create associations which trigger as soon as the customer's need comes through. So if my product is meant for say just say post meal, right? So then if post meal somebody is writing wings, then I should need to show them the ad, or I need to be there on that page, or I need to be connected on that category, so that that consumption then happens.
Mm.
So that
Mm.
so um, uh, either or like for example somebody types protein, then I need to okay people should remember okay protein means ABC brand,
Yeah,
a Greek yogurt means ABC brand, and then I have a much better better probability of getting picked, and therefore sales increases. So one is that from the branding and the marketing and the consumer need perspective, that be there when that
mm.
need arises. Now, either that you do that with ad, or either you do it outside the app, like telling, educating the consumer ki Greek yogurt matlab epi kaam mein aayi. So
Yeah.
therefore, and then when people type Greek yogurt, you will come up anyways on search, and therefore you get selected. So that is one thing on the branding and the marketing part. The second is since the behavior is very much related to modern trade, like typically. So if I go and Greek yogurt and if say epigami is not available, I pick the next brand and take it home. Similarly, if I try lollipops and desi pops is not available, I'll pick up a chupa chups because my kid wants a lollipop and I want to pick up a chupa chup and then I'll take the chupa chup
Mm.
and go. So therefore,
Mm.
supply chain and fill rates and making sure the product is available at the right when the customer need arises is also half the battle one. So I think these are the two things that we try and work on. That associate the brand whenever the need comes, and B make sure that the product is available when the need comes.
Makes sense. And I think just given the growth most consumer brands are seeing on QCOM, this is of course a high priority channel. But when I
Right,
look at it from an investor point of view, and I'm sure you as a CEO also think about it, is the profitability per channel, right? And I
right,
won't say for all brands, but many brands we see that the profitability is either lower on quick commerce or in many cases it's also negative. So it's almost like, you're doing it because you have to be there, you have to capture a certain share of the market in the anticipation
right,
that over
right,
time, it becomes more sustainable.
right.
But that's something I worry about. How do you think about sustainability of that channel?
So, Sarvesh, I think our understanding of profitability of consumer brands in India was built on is built on the large public companies which are already there, right? 12, 15, 18% EBITDA across. The key difference there is that they mostly own the distribution channel. So there are millions of outlets. So therefore, one outlet does not want to take your product. There's another outlet which will take your product, and the the brand strength is so strong that the retailer will have to stock you. Is essentially the way, and therefore they are able to work with as low trade margins as 20, 25%, etc. So but if you look at the US market or even European markets where retailers hold the power and where they have the ability to create white labels, etc., to I mean, as an alternative for those brands have to give much larger share of their entire product cost as or entire selling price as margin. And so therefore the final EBITDA margins for those companies are in single digits. So that's what I also feel, which with retailers where the retailer holds a power, which is in QCOM, there'll be a two or three player kind of a market where, and it's a large market right now. So therefore you want to participate, and specifically for the premium products, almost 40-50% of the market will lie in QCOM. So then the power will be with the retailer. So therefore the arbitrage will also will, the power to charge margins will also lie with the retailer. So therefore, the net margins expectation has to be revised accordingly, which is similar to say a modern trade. In a modern trade, I don't think it will be possible for any brand to be able to make 20% PAT. And
Yeah.
I think same thing in QCOM also. So I think that is how that is the way I think about it. It's a very important channel to be able for any new age consumer brand to be able to get scale, to get exposed to multiple consumers, etc. Uh, and the EBITDA would always be a little challenge, but as your brand start becoming stronger, and then you have many other channels kind of getting built on top of it, and that you are able to sell through, then it might get offset. And the second is that maybe you also build some bargaining power as your brand becomes stronger. So I think
Yeah.
these are the two things that we are thinking that, as our brand becomes stronger, maybe we'll have a little more leverage. And second
Hmm.
is the other platforms, other channels where, say, we might have a power as a brand like GT, or we might be able to have, say, outsized returns in those channels.
And how is it evolving? Like the market share, of course, QCOM is gaining market share at the expense of MT and GT.
Right.
When you think of it a few years again down the line, steady state, where do you think this will land?
I honestly feel that maybe empty might not even exist. Right? If it's empty exists on high density areas, now QCOM is
Hmm.
able to essentially do that for all empty. So, and if it
Hmm.
is able to also do the same very at same prices, say, as maybe any other large retailer does, then then maybe in categories where a lot of browse is not required, lot of browse is not required, where it's a very specific need, a lot
Hmm.
of consumption might move to QCOM. So a QCOM will gain a lot of share from MT. That's what how I believe. But then there will be categories which will be very browse led. That okay, I need to look at 5, 10 shirts, and I need to look at five different mobiles. Where I need to have a tactile feel of FNV. Then those categories might continue to exist in these other formats. But a lot of share is going to get gained from MT. That's what I
Hmm.
believe in
Hmm.
QCOM.
Got it. Interesting. And everything that we've been discussing thus far, I mean, it leads me to believe, and that is one of my core fundamentals of when I think about D2C investing, is that ultimately you need a level of product differentiation, right? Because otherwise, either the channel partner will hold, power over you, or there are incumbents like we were talking about who will hold power over
Yeah,
you, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
some of these channels will keep evolving, which we'll have to adjust. But unless we have that product differentiation, we won't be able to sort of scale up, have profitability and things like that, right? And you, of course, started with a very unique product, and over time are now expanding into different products, be it sweets, be it different kinds of snacks. What's the broader strategy like? How do you see the company getting positioned in the next few years?
I I think the endeavor would be to so see with innovative products, the deal is that um, it's very iterative. It's a lot of trial and error, right? And you have to keep on churning out new products, and we have been really good at doing that. I mean, that's one of the strengths that I believe that we have. We will keep on churning out new products, but the hit and success ratio of that will always be towards say 1 in 5 at best. I believe, right? I mean, 1 in 5 and 6. So you will keep on churning out new products, and hopefully two or three of them will stick as good as how Desi Pops has. Um, but at the same time, what I believe is that you don't need 20 different unique products, right? Retailer, if you have to tell your brand story, if you will have only media budget for two, three, four products, or even your sales officer will only say Desi Puffs मेरा बहुत अच्छा है, मेरा fruity twist which is my new आम पापड़ which is a layer is very great, but he will not start saying क्योंकि मेरी भेलपुरी में तीन चटनी आती है, then I have another product which is a dark chocolate kaju katli which has a layer of ganache in it. He will not be able to even complete the spiel. So therefore, the portfolio will have to be a mix of both, right? Which sells on its own. कि हाँ आप मेरा देसी पॉप दे रहे हो तो anyways I also buy chicky from other vendors, but the chicky comes from a wholesale outlet. Can I get chicky from you? So therefore, I give you a chicky as well, right? So as long as the product portfolio does not confuse the consumer, then we will get into adjacent categories and categories where the sales is essentially where the category size is extremely big, and you are essentially building on your distribution and your entry through Desi Pops. And I think that's how Parle has been able to do it on the back of Parle G, Britannia on the back of Good Day, ITC on the back of
Hmm.
Ashirwad, HUL on the back of
So
Lifebuoy,
anchor product and then
and then
introduce
get
other
into
products alongside.
multiple categories. That's how I feel. Not every product will be innovative, but just because we are a startup and also because of how nimble we are, we'll always be experimenting with newer and newer products. And then there
Hmm.
will be some products which will just take off. Uh,
Hmm.
but to be able to predict which ones will take off is extremely hard.
Hmm. And on the product side, one of those things I keep thinking about, like, we're talking about differentiation, is what are the white spaces that are also there,
Right.
right? And do you think there are enough white spaces that we are still not addressing, or probably there aren't enough white spaces, and it's going to be more incremental innovation from here on? Because I mean, over the last few years, we've seen a fair amount of startups across the FMCG space, but more specifically
Hmm.
on the food side as well, right?
No, I think there are enough and more white spaces, but food and personal care has mostly been incremental innovation across the world also, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's like okay, you will have protein but in different formats,
Hmm.
or you will have lollipop but in different formats. It is say, like most formats in some sense or way have already been looked at. It is just innovations have always been on top of something.
Hmm.
You might be
Like
able to
protein
deliver
powder, you could argue that it was a new category in India, right? Or all the
in
health
India.
supplements that
Okay,
we are taking
from
is a
that
new category.
perspective,
Yeah, from that perspective, in India,
from
like
that
some of these are
perspective,
newer categories, right? Like
right?
even I would say your product, the Desi Pops product, in some sense, it was a very new product, right?
Yeah, yeah,
While because there's nothing like it.
yeah,
Yes, there's a lollipop, but it's a very different kind of product. There's the form
right,
factor is similar, but otherwise it's completely different, right?
right.
So. Like, are you seeing like, okay, even as you look at your own product pipeline, that yes, there are those interesting gaps, that are there? Because otherwise, how do you disrupt a large player, right? I mean, they have distribution, they have brand, they have trust.
Hmm.
Uh, it's like on the back of product innovation is when you can really say that.
Absolutely.
Uh,
No, absolutely. No, no, no. There are enough and more. Like, I mean, if within sweets also there is, so as I mentioned, fresh to package, right? Now, packaged
hmm,
sweets, currently the entire industry is between five formats.
hmm,
Laddus, burfis, kaju katli, rasgulla, gulab jamun, maybe these things. And they're enough, and you know how big the Indian sweets as a portfolio is if you go to any fresh
hmm,
sweets. So there will be enough and more categories moving to mainstream. There was nobody knew in North India what Mysore Pak was. Now my Mysore Pak sells more in Patna and in
hmm,
Bihar and say UP versus what
hmm,
it sells in Bangalore.
hmm,
Because
hmm,
people just love that taste. So similarly, I think Malpua would get exported to South, and maybe some sort of a jalebi might get exported to South. Or petha,
hmm,
now petha is getting sold in Bangalore. I mean, there was no petha in. So there are
hmm,
either these geographical changes. The Sandesh has still not been packaged. So there are enough
hmm,
and more white spaces that we see in sweets category itself. Uh, then again, the health angle to it, right? No palm oil, no say no vegetable oil, or is
hmm,
there a way that you can do in sweets? So those are other pieces that you could look at. Even in highly cluttered markets like Indian snacks, there are proteinification of bhujia, save. South Indian snacks would didn't have any brand. Now we have two, three new age brands
hmm,
which are looking at South Indian snacks and making that in like a national thing. So people in Delhi are now know about Nippat. Nobody knew about Nippat before, right? So maybe Puram Poli from Maharashtra
hmm,
can become the next export. So there are enough and more white spaces, and that's why I think unorganized to organized, there's a very clear there's a more chance of success because you know, okay, acha, this is already getting consumed. If I give a similar kind of experience and make it much more convenient, which is what's happening in sweet, you have a much larger chance of success. Um, and that's how Son Papadi went through the roof, and now Kaju Katli is going through the roof, right, in terms of scale. So enough and more white spaces from that point of view. And in terms, this is like okay, existing categories, but I'm sure there will be some. So we are working on some really interesting stuff which can make say protein much more mass. Right now, most of the protein is 20 rupees at 100 grams, or 20 grams at 120 rupees. So we are essentially giving protein to the population of the country which already can afford it. So what about the rest of the country which cannot afford it, right? Are there possibilities there? So there are enough opportunities for sure.
Got it. Got it. Let's touch upon on the product side. Let's dig deeper. And I want to talk about the manufacturing aspect of it now. And you've had a very unique approach. Of course, you were very humble when you talked about the branding. But you've had this approach about being closer to the farm and that also reflecting in your branding message as well. Of course, that was more an outcome, but the input of being closer to the farm and manufacturing there, what is the reason for doing that?
So I think interestingly, Sarvesh, like why we started manufacturing, right? First, when we started selling desi pops, we were selling it, buying it from the SHG, which was in North Karnataka, and selling it, right? The speed of scale, that speed of growth that we had, we were not able to satisfy the demand, right? And also the quality issues. One batch was different, this batch was different. So we're like, okay, how do we set this? How do we create? How do we not lose the authenticity of the product, but at the same time get to scale and standardization? Quality, etc. So the most intuitive thing that came to us was a first figure out the raw material, get the raw material sorted. So we said, okay, how do we get the raw material sorted? Let's be as close to the farm as possible to make sure that the tamarind comes from like maybe within 30 to 40 kilometer radius, and then comes to our unit and gets cleaned there. So therefore, we have 100% quality control on the way tamarind is getting cleaned. And jaggery comes from Mandia, and then again we set up with a farmer that that we know the bricks level of every of jaggery which is coming in. We know the process of jaggery which is coming in, and all of those pieces, right? So that's essentially what we did, and that's why we set up near the farm. It was to try and control the input. And the second thing is that we did not want to compromise on the way it was getting manufactured, right? So, so essentially, this desi pops was essentially being done by hand completely at that time, at this initially. So when we started setting up our manufacturing unit, we said, okay, we can mechanize some part of it, but the large part of it, till we don't figure out the right machinery, will have to be done by hand. And what kind of workforce would be relevant for that? And urban workforce was not willing to do that. So therefore, rural workforce was much more. They were already. I mean, they had much tougher jobs like agriculture, land labor, etc. So they were more than happy to come into a unit which was very well hygienic, clean. You can sit down and you can do the entire manufacturing. So they were willing to come in. So all of those two pieces made us decide that let's set up the entire manufacturing piece as close to the source as possible. And that has become a strength from, as you mentioned, for brand building also, because a lot of people know or vouch for the authenticity that we give in our products and also scale. And even today, as I keep on talking about in all our investor pitches, that even when Desi Pops has become, say, an annualized revenue of like a consumer spend of approximately at least 50 crores plus, there's not a single copy of us in the market, whether it's an Amazon, whether it's Blinkit, Flipkart, Instamart, anywhere, right? And that's why, because we are able to manufacture almost 70 lakh pops on a single day. So that's has become one of our strengths, and that is what gave us the confidence to set up our meter manufacturing also. I mean, we would so all of those things have, I think, have been our strength in some sense. We're more a product and a manufacturing company than a pure play marketing company.
And what's been the challenge in the setting up and the scaling up phase of these manufacturing units? Talk about some of them that have come up over the years.
Uh, because there was no template, right? So we could
Mm.
not pick up, okay, hey, go on YouTube and say, ki, energy bar, how is it manufactured, right? So there'll be like at least 10, 20 brands which have already figured out, and there'll be machines from China which are already there, and you just send them a mail and then, hey, get the quotations, compare the quotes. I'm not maybe I'm making it easier than it is, but then it is much getting the template and getting the product machinery and then starting, right? There's a price comparison, everything. We had to figure out, okay, every step, what is the right machinery for this step? And this could come from different backgrounds. Like, for example, a mixers come from a paint and a tire manufacturing unit line, right? Because of the viscosity of the product material that we have. So that kind of entire setting up of the entire the assembly line took us a lot of time and a lot of trial and error. So we got wrong machines in, we got uh, we overestimated in some cases what could the output be. So those and some of our machine manufacturers who were our partners also overestimated that they will be able to deliver something which is so artisanal. So the timelines went from 2 months to 6 months to 9 months. So those kind of challenges were there substantial. So I think that has been the biggest challenge for us, and even for sweets, it's very very artisanal today. So our entire work over the last 2 years has been how do you move this artisanal piece to make it like how a bread and a biscuit is getting manufactured. Only then will you be able to scale it to how big a biscuit or a bread brand is. So that has been the largest challenge, I believe, in making unorganized products at scale.
The first point that you mentioned is something I've heard other founders also say, that while it's not like the process is, there's rocket science behind it, you can solve for it, but it's just that the iterations that are required, if there was some support that was available during that phase,
Yeah.
which I think more from an ecosystem perspective was what I've been also trying to understand what are the gaps there,
Hmm.
that has come up in the past as well.
Right. No, I think in terms of the right know-how, in terms of talent, it is there. In terms of the the ecosystem of machine manufacturers in India is just missing, is absolutely absent. We always have to go to China
Hmm.
or to Europe and then work with them, and they are willing to tinker their machines and work with their machines and come up with interesting solutions for us. But then the cost becomes like
Of
European machine
course.
costs
Yeah.
are impossible to afford at a very early stage, right?
Hmm.
But most of Indian machine manufacturers are, hey, I will get a machine from ABC, I'll put my label on it, I will
Hmm.
export it, import it, or I'll do small iterations on it to make it much more easier, to make it more amenable to say Indian climate, Indian weather conditions, or Indian products, and then sell it. But very little R&D,
Hmm.
and nobody's
Hmm.
willing to
Hmm.
put in that effort on R&D also.
Yeah.
So, so I think that is missing. But there is amazing talent. Like I mean, the people who are so passionate about this that would live and breathe machines. Um,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
but then they don't have the uh, right outlet to be able to build these machines.
Interesting. And apart from the machine, there's also the capital part. I'm assuming you've of course solved for it over the years. But the other part of it is the labor, the compliances, the apparatus right around it. What's been your learning? How has the ecosystem also changed since you started? Is it getting better, worse?
No, I don't think it is getting better, Sarvesh, to be honest. I don't. I think the every year I figure out that okay, there are some 5 new licenses that we have to look at.
Hmm.
I think that has been a challenge. I think it needs to improve substantially. I think there has to be one integrated place. Hey, I want to start a manufacturing unit. I put in all my details. Everything gets
Hmm.
uploaded at one single place. If you can do this in UPI, I don't know why it's not happening on
Hmm.
this, specifically in food licenses, etc. And there's regulations from every side, right? You have a weights and measure, you have a Factories Act, you have a um, you have a labor ESIs, like there are tons which make it very, very difficult you essentially have to build a team to manage compliances, which a young startup cannot do. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
you learn most of this as we scale, but I don't know if this is necessary. I'm sure these would have been put in place to make sure that there are no bad actors.
Hmm.
But I
Hmm.
think there could be a better way as well.
Hmm. Hmm. And you're saying it's only increasing by the day, like some of these compliances.
I don't think the compliances are increasing. It's just that maybe we are getting to know about these compliances because as we scale, we have much more
Rigorous about
thorough,
it.
rigorous
Yeah.
compliances and rigorous, and we have the right team members who are joining in
Uh,
and like, hey, this is missing or that is missing, etc.
uh,
And as we
uh,
scale, I think you also get into more scrutiny. So you try. I mean, officials also tell you that you've missed ABC license. Uh,
hmm.
but yeah, I think this could be done in a uh, much better manner.
Interesting. Related to this is of course a topic that nationally we are talking about how do we increase more exports. We are all seeing the kind of international pressure we are facing. Is that category or is that segment something that you are looking at, or you see other startups also looking at how do we go global? What are some of the barriers there if you explored a little bit for what could be solved there?
If you look at from the point of view of foods where the shelf life is extremely small, exports to my mind make sense if you're closer to the market. Um, so closer to the market. So anything which is say lesser than 4, 5, or lesser than 1 year shelf life, it's almost impossible to export in food. So it'll always be limited from that point of view, right? So if India has to export its food, or maybe at least like how Korea has been able to export its food without having to set up manufacturing units, just being exporting the Korean culture, then maybe that has to be the route, right? Where you make people excited about Indian palate and Indian tastes and Indian culture in general, and then hope like the local um, countries will adopt and build that into their product portfolio itself. Like now Bingo, like Sunfeast already, Hippie already has a Korean flavor. Bingo has a Korean flavor. Maggie has a Korean flavor, right? And I mean that's how I think we can export our culture in the food perspective specifically.
I mean, culture,
So
you would argue that probably a certain extent it is already because of our diaspora is already getting exported, right? But it's
yeah,
not has not translated necessarily into those people saying, okay, I want to consume Indian
yes,
food, packaged food or whatever it is, right? To a
yes,
certain
yes.
extent, probably in some countries, but it's not like significant.
No, it's
Uh,
not mainstream as yet.
yeah, yeah. It's not
It,
like some of the, it's a big business for the larger players here to, export, right?
correct. Yeah, yeah. So I think that's one piece on the export piece, and the second is I think again the regulations, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you have to have a dedicated person who understands exports to build export channel in India. It is not like a plug and play that hey, I want to sell in Amazon, I sent out stock, I'll get the money in. It is a huge. I mean, you have to. There are shipping bills that needs to be sent out, and then those have to be reconciled. And for again a startup, it becomes very difficult unless until that's your core focus. Um,
Hmm.
so I think both from the point of view of regulatory and we, I think we as brands having ambition to be able to set up manufacturing units maybe in Europe, in Middle East, and America. Those could be the opportunities that we could explore in building exports from India, from the food point of view.
Multiple problems for you to look at: product, manufacturing, channel,
Yeah.
marketing. So all you have to do in entrepreneurship, and this is
Yes.
something I want to also touch upon, is are there traits that you saw in yourself, right?
Hmm.
That made you jump into entrepreneurship. And the reason I ask is probably a lot of viewers, would be thinking about it probably.
Right.
Is that something you were planning or it just sort of happened?
No, for me, it happened, Sarvesh. I think the only thing I knew is that I wanted to be independent, so therefore I had not taken any liabilities. I had not taken a car loan, home loan, etc. So I always wanted to be independent. So I had a decent amount of savings. So basis that I never took any liabilities. So that was always there, and that independence thing had to translate into either entrepreneurship or something like an individual pursuit where I would pursue excellence in, say, a sport or something like that, right? So that was very sure of, but it was not something planned or thought through. Uh,
Interesting. And you mentioned a sport, and you're of course a rock climber, from
yeah,
what I understand. Not
yes.
that I know many people who are into rock climbing, but give us a sense of how that happened and how that has also shaped your journey as an entrepreneur.
I think I was always into outdoors. My dad was a geologist, so he took us out when we were very quick kids, and so I spent like most of my summers in most Indian wilderness, like mostly in locations where there was no TV, no internet, no nothing. So we were always out in the mountains or in remote parts of India. So I think that kind of shaped us. Um, and I was always hiking, etc. when I was a teenager, and then the next thing logical step was mountaineering, climbing, etc. And I have a very busy mind, so I kind of realized I wanted an activity which could help me focus, help me live in that that precise movement, and specifically climbing since you are at a particular height and you're essentially all your senses are very activated, so you are living at that particular point of time. So that kind of helped, and therefore I think that is why I got addicted to it pretty much. It helps me, and as you mentioned, it's a what how is that shaped? It helps me stay sane. As you know, entrepreneurship is extremely a roller coaster. You have a high and a low, etc. So it's more meditative in that sense, climbing. So that really helps. Um, and it also is something which consumes you. So therefore, you not thinking about work at all times. So there are uh, other things which can at least take some part of that um, brain space away from daily firefighting, etc. So I think that's why it kind of works for me.
Interesting. And I've seen you have a very, very different approach compared to, I would say, most founders I've met, especially in India, where apart from everything that you're doing to build a large company, you're one of the rare founders who also talks about impact. And I think you mean it in a very, very genuine way, right? And I've
Right.
met enough founders to say that it comes from heart for you, is what I feel on the other side. What makes you think that way?
No, I don't know. It's a way, but I think I have always felt that equal opportunity has to be a given, right? I mean, I think that is what makes has helped us take some decisions. And I feel that we have been extremely privileged because of wherever we were born, etc., which was mostly a chance or a throw of dice, right? And I see a lot of akkas who work for us, and I know that their kids will never have that opportunity. It's almost impossible for them to have opportunity. So I think if in any way capitalism can help at least get the opportunity equal at all levels of society, I think that as a just a thought experiment really excites me. So if that can happen, that I think would be really really helpful. And with now AI, hopefully this does become a reality, and then
Yeah.
everybody has equal opportunity. So I think that is what drives most of our impact based decisions.
Tell me, why don't most founders, and this is one of those things that has perplexed me, and I've been into, impact investing, I've been into pure commercial investing, and why don't founders, even those who are creating impact, like to talk about themselves as an impact entrepreneur?
Maybe there is a taboo that as soon as you say impact, that you mean that you're not going to give good returns to your shareholders, and so therefore they don't want to get classified therefore, and then not alienate say 80% of the industry who is going to give them
Hmm.
money. So maybe that is
Hmm.
why that you don't classify yourself as an impact entrepreneur.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I think every capitalistic enterprise, if done right, can be impact. It's just that I think the definition of impact kind of um, needs to needs to change in some sense, right? I mean, I think every enterprise which creates good jobs and is fair to most of its employees as well as the stakeholders
Yeah.
is in some way or form creating impact. Um, but it's just that I think you club impact entrepreneurs separately and commercial entrepreneurs separately and therefore impact VC separately, and then
Hmm.
impact will only look at impact and impact will not look at commercial. I think that is what maybe gets people not to call them ourselves out as impact entrepreneurs.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And even as VCs, I think there was always whether one should talk about oneself as an impact VC or just a VC.
Yeah.
Because if you are a non-impact VC, might think, oh, hey, so this is an impact VC. So, probably
Huh.
they're not doing as good a deal that as, we are doing. So I think it perhaps goes on both sides of the table. I want to end with one big question from your end, which is that big vision that keeps you going,
Hmm.
with GoDesi.
I think with GoDesi, the biggest vision is that if we are able to. Okay, I mean, I think I have a picture in my mind that if this is what we are able to do with GoDesi, then it will be super
Mm,
cool. So I imagine that tomorrow or when GoDesi becomes successful enough as a brand, a teenager is okay to give a Kaju Katli bar to his girlfriend on Valentine's Day and does not look up to. I mean, if we are able to make that cultural shift, that Chikki is as cool as say an energy bar, or Kaju Katli is as cool as a dark chocolate. Um, and if we are able to make that cultural shift and that also percolates in the world in some sense, that will be amazing, right? I mean, Chatpata palette is also a palette, not only umami. So I think that is something that we would love to achieve.
No, that is a super cool description. I had never thought of Godesi like that, but when you think of it, it does make sense. At the moment you've reached there, I think you've cracked it. So of course, makes a lot of sense. No, super. I've really enjoyed this discussion, Vinay. I really appreciate you taking out the time. Of course, we've been interacting over the years, and I keep learning something new every time we speak. It's a pleasure to see also what you're building. I'm a big fan of your products, and I'm sure you'll continue to do well.
Thank you so much, Sarvesh. It's been great. It was great interacting with you, and I've always loved connecting with you. Thank you so much.
Super. Thank you.